Let's have a chat with Jonathan Davis. Evidently, if you believe the papers this morning, Facebook are joining Google, and they say they aren't going to pay tax, or back tax. And now we know that Google eventually coughed up £130 million. And last, I think it was Friday night, wasn't it, into Saturday, we were told this was marvellous. We were dancing a jig. Now it turns out that they're going to pay the Italian government 3 or 4 times as much as they're paying us. So the question is, especially as tax return day comes over the horizon on the 31st of January, a lot of people who are self-employed, who've earned a little bit of money on the side, alongside of their PAYE, who are having to fill out their tax forms. It just doesn't seem fair, does it? I don't fully grasp it. If I'm honestly, I don't fully understand it. It was all complicated. I watched that programme the other night about the Cayman Islands. Did you see that? About how companies, even like Manchester United, there was 20,000 companies in one building, and this journalist was really trying to explain how they do this so-called offshore thing. And then there was loads of people on the Cayman who were living in abject poverty. Well, one man who might be able to explain it all to us in very simple terms, so even I can follow it, is Jonathan Davis, the Economy Wealth Manager, who I'm delighted to say joins me now. Hi, Jonathan.
Good morning, good afternoon even, John.
You're worse than me. Listen, 130 million they've coughed up. That seems a lot of money to a lot of ordinary people. But then we read that they're giving a lot more to Italy. Where are we going wrong? Are we going wrong? Are they doing anything wrong? Let's just talk about Google first, then we'll go to Facebook. What do you think, my friend?
You need to understand something, John. The super rich don't pay tax. That's the way it's been since time immemorial. And that's the system. Until we get that reality, nothing's going to change. Because it's the politicians that have created this. Hey, if I was running Google, or I was a billionaire, chance it would be, I wouldn't want to pay tax. And I would do everything I possibly could to avoid paying tax. Not illegally, no, entirely legally.
And you'd employ the cleverest people you possibly could to do that. And indeed, an awful lot of people from Her Majesty's Revenue actually end up giving that advice to these big companies because they're the only people who understand our very complex tax laws. Am I right, Jonathan?
You're absolutely right. And there is no question that the politicians in the era of Gordon Brown are absolutely at fault here. Gordon Brown is one of the biggest culprits of them all. He enlarged our tax code to the biggest, most complex tax code in the developed world. In other words, of course there are going to be oodles of loopholes. So, the question you raise is, how come Google's paying HM Treasury less than they're going to pay the Italian Treasury? Because of the particular tax codes, because of the agreement, the political agreement that Google has come to the politicians locally in Rome and in London. Now, for whatever reason, the London politicians and the bureaucrats have said, look, I'll tell you what, let's just shake hands on £130 million and we'll call it quits. Because ultimately, Google probably doesn't have to pay anything.
That's right.
By going with the letter of the law, forget spirit, the letter of the law is they probably don't have to pay anything, but they want to grease the palms, quote unquote, and make things nice and fuzzy-wuzzy with the politicians so that they can get, no doubt, some business corporate benefits, and there's nothing wrong in that. That's lobbying, that's what happens. But, of course, there's no way on earth that these multinationals are paying an appropriate level of tax. Hey, you're talking to a capitalist. As far as I'm concerned, government receives far too much tax, but when you get billionaires, and the largest international concerns in the world not paying much tax, guess who's paying the tax? You and me. That's the problem.
Okay, so how do we right this so-called wrong? I mean, I know you don't think it's total wrong, because if they can get away with it, why not? And you blamed Brown. Godfrey Bloom is doing the same thing today on Twitter as well. But how are we going to change it so that they do pay the right amount, or a fairer amount, as we might say it in inverted commas?
Well, the global political community is, of course, in cahoots with the global accountancies, the global bankers, and they have got this little cabal going where they agree policies for the benefit of the international elite. Well, we need new politicians. We need politicians who will benefit the people, not the elite. And the argument is, yes, but if the UK did anything on its own, then that would detrimentally affect our opportunities with billionaires and with multinationals.
Yeah, they'll just take their business elsewhere.
Well, isn't that exactly the same argument they say that if we leave the EU, then we're not going to be able to buy Mercedes and so on, and the Saudi billionaires not going to live in Kensington Back Gardens? Of course, it's absolute nonsense. The UK should take unilateral actions. The politicians should tax accordingly. We shouldn't allow multinational companies to, quote, base their administrative centres, unquote, in tax-free areas in the EU. It would be Ireland or Luxembourg. Outside of the EU, you mentioned, for example, the Cayman Islands. No, if they make profits in the UK, they should pay tax on those profits.
Okay, talk to me about the fact that Google had 21 meetings with ministers, including several with George Osborne himself. My producer says, I'm not going to fill him a tax form this year. I want a meeting with the Chancellor as well. I want to haggle.
Yeah.
I want to haggle over how much he's got to pay. He's kind of got a point, hasn't he?
Well, of course he does. Of course he's going to get a meeting with George Osborne because he's going to hold back his 12 pence of tax to pay.
Precisely.
That's lobbying for you. If you're big and powerful, you get access to government. It's as simple as that. It is a system for the elite, to the benefit of the elite, to the detriment of the people. It's always been since time immemorial, I'm afraid to say.
So what about your man Zuckerberg then? On Facebook, he now says he's not going to pay any back tax either. This is after he promised to give away half his fortune. So how do the people have the ability to even look in the mirror? They're stinking hypocrites.
Most of them are, and let's, Facebook, Google, Amazon, you name it. It's not just the tech companies, it's lots of international-based companies who do business in the UK, make very large profits, and good luck to them. They've got great businesses because they're not going to make profits unless they provide a service or a product which people or businesses actually want to buy. The problem is, as you say, they're hypocrites. Do you remember the original slogan of Google? Don't do evil. Well, I would suggest to you that a company which in Britain alone is selling £4 billion of services a year. They've got 5,000 employees. They're building a £1 billion headquarters in London, near King's Cross. Do you think it's likely they're making a lot of profit in the UK? I think it is, and I think it's absolute nonsense that the politicians have allowed their friends, the accountants and the bankers, to create a system where a business which does transactions in the UK, makes profits in the UK, says that actually it was in Ireland. Or is it the Cayman Islands?
Yeah,
and of course, it's total nonsense.
Yeah, but if this argument is raging here in our newspapers, it's probably also now raging in Ireland, it's probably also now raging in Italy. Maybe that will make it change.
Maybe it will. I have to say to you, I don't think it's the biggest issue for ordinary folk when they come to the voting box, when they come to the ballot box. That's the problem. And on that, the ultra-rich and the international companies will continue to benefit from and smile at, because it seems to me that until and unless we have a radical change in our economics, which means our politics, in other words, we bring back a thing called capitalism, something like this is not going to improve.
Okay. Finally, talk to me about the Cayman Islands. I don't know if you saw that documentary. I was trying to get my head around it. I mean, what is offshore? How does it actually work then? How do they actually pull off this conjuring trick? Well, like Manchester United. Well, Manchester United is clearly based in Manchester, even though all the fans don't live in Manchester. But, you know, tell me, how can that be offshore? I don't understand.
Sure. There are states, countries around the world which have particular tax codes which essentially say that you base your business or your personal residence for tax purposes here. We won't tax you. We will charge a lot of money to the company that you base here. In effect, that's how we, the government of that state, get our money, but we're not going to directly tax you. So, you with your accountant or with your tax lawyer, you say, I don't want to be based in the UK any longer. I want to live here, but I don't want to be technically based here. Okay, no problem. We can base you in the Cayman Islands, British Virgin Islands, Luxembourg, and so on. Isle of Man used to be quite hot. The Jersey Islands used to be very good at this, although not so much now because they are much closer to the UK tax code now. And so long as you don't stay in the UK 365 days a year. I mean, you are limited in how long you can be in the UK. You can treat yourself as, in effect, for tax purposes, a citizen of that other country. Manchester United, of course, based in the UK. However, just like Google, for administrative purposes, it says it's somewhere else. This is a system which is allowed to continue, amazing as it sounds.
It is absolutely incredible. And you're saying, as an out-and-out capitalist, you don't think it's right?
Well, of course it's not right, because, as I say, all these companies, they're making very large profits brilliantly in the UK based on UK purchases. Of course, they should pay taxes in the UK because, simple fact, that they don't pay much tax means that every one of your listeners pays more tax, and or the government has to borrow more. Remember, the UK has the largest percentage borrowing of GDP in the developed world. So either they tax us more or they borrow more. Either way, you and I and our children are detrimentally affected.
You're good. You're good, you are. I like you. Nice talking to you. Thank you for explaining it in such clear terms, Jonathan. Go and have a strong cup of tea now, all right?
Pleasure. I look forward to it. All the best. Bye-bye.
All the best. Bye-bye. Jonathan Davis, Economy Wealth Manager. What do you make of what he had to say? I loved all that.